This is Scotty Reed with a Black Talk Radio News Report. I am speaking with Shepard P. McDaniel, also known as Brother Shep. He is the director of the Universal Zulu Nation Department of Community Affairs. We will be discussing an upcoming campaign for community control of NYPD police, which will launch on March 22nd next month. Campaign literature says, in the face of continued police violence against blacks, Latinos, and other people of color, and all oppressed people, there's an urgent need for a united front of organizations and individuals to mobilize for structural changes in policing. Mr. McDaniel, thank you for speaking with BTR News.
Yes, thank you, Scotty. Good to be here.
Sir, it seems that over 25 community organizations in New York have signed on to this campaign, and I understand the number of organizations continues to grow.
Yes, exactly. Matter of fact, every day we're getting more people that get, the information out that we're doing this. And actually, we launched the campaign last March 22nd. So it's been an ongoing effort in terms of doing the research and getting the construction, and everything done for the campaign itself, which is really actually 2 years in making. But yes, we continue to grow every day.
What has so many people concerned in New York, and is there an expected surge in state violence against the communities there?
Actually, I wouldn't say there's been a surge, but really there hasn't been any change in decades. What we have found is that rise in people utilizing social media and able to get information through that venue, that people are more aware of what's going on. This campaign itself actually started in the 60s. Myself, I was in the original Black Panther Party in the early 70s. And community control over the police is something that we always talked about. But the climate wasn't really ready for it until recently. Again, with that whole awareness by the community becoming more conscious through social media and so forth. And even with the sensationalism, which usually pops up every now and then, on mainstream media, going back to the Gray case and looking at Trayvon Martin, and here in New York, we look at Ramali Graham, and we look at the situation at Staten Island, with the choking, death, the brother there, which reminded us all here in New York of the Anthony Baez case. So it's something that's been going on, but now people are more conscious of it.
BTR News has reported on the Bronx 120, a large group of young black men, some who had gone on to college, who were rounded up in terrifying raids on their families' homes by the NYPD with assistance from federal officers last year. The young men were all charged under RICO charges, which is usually reserved for organized international and multi-state crime syndicates. Some activists believe this was a deliberate attack on that community in retaliation for being sued, and that's the NYPD that was sued over stop and frisk, which was ruled unconstitutional by federal courts. What are your thoughts about those raids?
On a personal level, this really affects me because I actually live in that same neighborhood that this took place, for the Bronx 120. And I'm real familiar with that precinct, the 47th, which basically is made up of a bunch of cowboys, really. I've lived up here since 1963. So I know their mentality and how they feel about the black community, and they definitely control and patrol here like an army of occupation. But in terms of RICO, again, going back, through history again, it was put in allegedly to deal with organized crime, but those of us that have been activists over the years know that was utilized hand in hand with the counterintelligence program, COINTELPRO, to deal with activists that were organizing in the community for our human rights and for black liberation, with the setups and the conspiracy charges that were, levied on people like Latinos Shakur and the Black Panthers and, all organizers, just recently Oscar Rivera was released, from being in prison under conspiracy, quote unquote, charges. So, this is a method which actually was put into works back when the Clinton administration was still in effect, when they passed the Omnibus Crime Bill in the 90s, looking at so-called gang statutes and putting that into action, along with RICO. So we look at the crime bills and how they were designed then, and we all know the enemy plans, decades ahead of time. This was the right time for them to unleash it. And yes, it is a response to the stop and frisk issue, but this is something they've had in the works for some time now, and they're just beginning to really do that. And they continue to do it. We had grant houses in Manhattan, projects in Manhattan that were raided recently, and there are smaller raids that go on almost every day that hardly get into the news, where people are gathered up and snatched up because of they might have known someone that they went to high school with and took a picture together, and then years later they want to come and say it was some sort of conspiracy because they knew that individual.
You mentioned COINTELPRO, which was used against civil rights era organizations, but also what is known as the Black Power movement, which could be represented by the Black Panther Party. Yesterday, BTR News put out a report about the NYPD being cited in documents that they filed with the court in response to Freedom of Information Act requests, but that they were sending undercover officers to infiltrate protests that were organized around the police chokehold murder of Eric Gardner. And that just reminded me of what I read about COINTELPRO tactics, and it seems that they are still using those same tactics to disrupt and ultimately destroy today's organizations like they did the Panthers.
Exactly, they basically do the same thing over and over again. They're masters of imitation. They don't really create anything, which is why it's so important that our community gets educated in terms of what their tactics are and how they go about doing that. And those of us who have that experience firsthand, it's our duty to teach the younger people so they can be aware. And we do classes to teach organizations and communities, right on the ground. We'll go into a community room inside of housing projects, and we'll set up Know Your Rights classes, and even do more than that. We actually have a 14-week training that we do, designed specifically to teach people not just to know their rights, but to know how to organize their neighborhoods. So when something happens, they're not running out to someone on television to get help because they can get cameras in, but they're actually prepared ahead of time to do that. So that's one of the things that we definitely do based on our experience of knowing how the government does the same things over and over again, whether it was COINTELPRO or whether it was Operation Chesmar, or all the different tactics that they have used, throughout the years to stop, our movement.
Is there a feeling in the community based on the rhetoric of Donald Trump, who is a Blue Lives Matter supporter and expressed that in recent executive orders, that maybe the current leadership of the NYPD will feel emboldened to use even more aggressive tactics against non-white communities, using fake news about rises in crime to justify further repression of affected communities?
What the Trump administration, and I could even call him a counter campaign, has really done is just revealed, itself. All these things have been going on all along undercover, and he just basically is putting it out there for everyone to see what they're doing. We were always trained that, when capitalism is in decline, that it will respond with fascism, and we all, I think, are pretty clear that this system here is on the decline. It's about to fall apart, but their response is always to increase, their terrorism in the communities and to attack dissent, in fascist matters. So we look at, what's going on now with the fake news. I think if anybody read George Orwell's book, the double speak that was in that, and we basically never really trusted the mainstream media. Even when we read newspapers back before, television and cable became so in the forefront, that you're taught to read between the lines of the newspapers. So it's the same thing now, where you have to learn how to look at what's on television, on mainstream, and look between the lines of what's being said, And then even more than that, you have to learn how to decipher what you do get in social media, because there is a lot of things there that's planted by the government to get people to respond and act in certain ways. So it's who do you trust? Who gives the real news? Programs like this one, like Black Talk Radio, are extremely important because they go to the community and put out the truth. So that's what we're looking for to counter this so-called alternative facts.
Speaking of Donald Trump, he seems to have united some groups across religious and color lines with his executive actions against Muslims, ultimately stopped by the federal courts, and his actions on immigration. Mr. McDaniel, concerning this campaign for community control of the NYPD, I have heard those in the black community who say, what have these immigrant and Muslim groups done for the black community? Why should we unite with them against Trump? Mr. McDaniel, what do you say to those giving voice to those sort of isolationist views in the black community?
That's interesting because, living in the hood, which I've done all my life, we saw a lot of immigrant groups coming in and opening up bodegas, as we call them, from Latino name, but opening up stores and businesses in the community. Was always issues of, they only hire their own families to do it. They don't hire for the community. And people were saying, well, you shouldn't, go to those businesses and deal with them. And when all this really began, even going back to 9/11, basically those of us that know said, well, okay, you're going to start to see the oppression that's going to come on them, and where they just thumbed their nose up, in terms of black liberation struggle, or not got involved in it, not supported our political prisoners, who were, a lot of them also Muslims, but basically staying, themselves isolated, that they were going to have to come around. So we saw that recently when all the stores were closed in the neighborhoods. There was a huge rally that took place out in Brooklyn of mostly brothers and sisters from Yemen and different places like that went out there and they protested. And we had that same day, we actually had a huge rally in Manhattan to support Ramali Graham. Folks who don't know, that was a young brother that police ran in and kicked his door, and actually it was one cop who did it and executed him right in front of his grandmother and his younger brother right in the bathroom. He was totally unarmed. So both of those demonstrations actually merged together when we marched across the Brooklyn Bridge to meet with them. Most of them had already departed already, but just the action of seeing the black community and, against racist police brutality, joining with the immigrant community dealing with ICE and the federal assault, it shows that this is one world. And, we have to begin to look at putting aside those silly differences and deal with the fact that fascism is here. And the only way we're going to fight it is by uniting and coming together to deal with that and putting aside those differences, particularly in our own neighborhood.
Mr. McDaniel, it was great speaking with you today. Can you give us contact information and any other details you want to share with those who want to support this movement in New York?
Yes. Well, what you can do is you can go online to our website, which is votecommunitycontrol.newyorkcity. That's VOTECommunitycontrol.NYC. That's votecommunitycontrol.nyc. Or you can email us at campaignccp@gmail.com. That's campaignccp@gmail.com. All right, for those of you that live in the New York tri-state area, you can come out to one of our first open houses that we're doing in New York City. It's a citywide open house conference where all the organizations in New York City that deal with police terrorism and fighting against it will be coming to do presentations. They'll be showing some films, doing demonstrations and so forth. It's free of charge. It'll be held at the All Souls Unitarian Church inside of their newly renovated Reedy Hall. It's located at 1157 Lexington Avenue. That's between 79th and 80th Street. And you can take the number 6 train to 77th Street. The event's being held from 6:30 until 10 p.m. and it's free admission. So, come on out next Saturday. That's this coming Saturday, February 18th, And you can meet us and get more information on both the voter campaign for community control over the police, and also meet some of the other organizations that are organized. There will be a lot of parents there who lost their children, unfortunately, to police violence. They will be there in addition to that. And get in touch with us. We'll give you the information to go and watch the live stream that we're going to be setting up, just in case you don't live in New York. But you can learn what we do and spread it to your cities. We have to be able to do this, and it's something everybody can do. We can change the city charters throughout this country, and we don't need elected officials to take control of our community. So we start with the police, and eventually we move on to all those institutions that are controlled by people from outside of our community, whether it be our schools, our hospitals, our housing, our sanitation, anything. We don't control anything in our communities, and that's part of the whole protracted struggle and revolution. All power to people.
Thank you for speaking with us, and you have a good day, sir.
All right, Scotty. You too, and keep up the good work, brother.
This has been Scotty Reed with the Black Talk Radio News Report. You can support independent media at blacktalkradionetwork.com.